Welcome to Wednesday Q&A, where you all ask the questions and we answer. I am joined, as always, by my fearless and amazing co-host, Kristen Williams, Doctor of Physical Therapy and LYT amazing teacher.
Thank you, Laura, for that beautiful intro. I'm so happy to be here. As always, I am joined by my fearless friend and leader, creator of the LYT Yoga method, and just extraordinary person from tip to toe.
Oh
Laura.
my gosh. Let's just end right there. Thank you, my dear. Okay, so we have got a question from Izaminik G21. So this woman says she feels, or man, I can't tell by the picture, so apologies. Feel tightness and lower back in my hamstrings. In handstand, my hips are far away to stack over the shoulders, even when tiptoe. Any suggestions? The same happened when I used to practice headstand. I couldn't tiptoe close enough to get the hip over. So the limitation is getting that pelvis over, because it sounds like you're feeling the tightness in the low back and hamstrings, and you are not alone. I think
No, you're not.
This is the thing that, first of all, you're not alone. And the second thing is that you are taking yourself into a pretty dramatic shape that requires that you open up the back such that you can get the pelvis over your shoulders. And that is, that's work. So I always say handstand is so great because it challenges everything, but especially our patience, because we have to develop the range of motion, so in your hips, to a degree, in your hamstrings, and in your thoracic spine, in your shoulders. And then you have to develop the strength within that range, because the different parts of the movement into handstand, I always think of it like, it's like little dials, and it's like you get to here, you get to here, you get to here. You can't, very few people can skip from 0 to 10. It just is a process. So let me first reassure you that this is very common and everyone is eager to get into handstand, and it takes time, especially if you have that feeling of tightness. So the thing to do is to be patient and continue to do the things that will open up that back fascial line. Since I don't know your practice, what I would say is really make sure that whatever movement practice you're practicing, whether it's LYT yoga or something else, that you're consistent, because it's the consistency that really, really matters. That's where you're going to just kind of chip away at the restrictions and the flexibility and get stronger and stronger. But if you're not consistent, say, for instance, in how you forward fold, if you're forward folding and you're pitching your pelvis back and rounding the mid back and low back, that is going to show up in something like a handstand. The other thing I say about handstand, it is the truth teller. You cannot bypass things that you can bypass in other poses. So you have to learn. So my big question would be, are you flexing well at your hips? Mm-hmm. And that would be that you're not rounding in your spine to get your hands down for a handstand, a forward fold, or anything else, pyramid, on and on. I've seen a lot of people who back off that, get blocks under their hands, and they change that back fascia tissue, which seems kind of counterintuitive because you think I'm getting more away from the floor, but you're holding the consistency in your form. The triple S that we talk about in LYT, can you hold that scapula, sacrum, and skull in the same line in many different ways, whether your head is down and your sacrum's up, or it's all in one plane, or vice versa and standing. The consistency, to me, is the number one thing you have to work on to open up that back fascia.
And I am that person. I was there. I have decent hamstrings. They're within normal limits, but they are not hyper flexible. I am not the person that can get my hands on the ground and get my hips up over with the foot still on the floor. So I have developed my own, use of momentum where I really sit and push. But that ability to do that was created with a ton of what you're talking about, repetition. And where was I learning? I wasn't learning in my hamstrings or my leg. Well, I was building quad strength. I will say if you can't lean into a handstand, you need to be able to push into a handstand, because the second you try kicking into a handstand is when you lose your core. If you kick with the top leg and that is your MO, you are automatically going into that kind of triple extension and you lose your core. So learning how to, because your hamstrings are going to keep your knee bent, you need to be able to push with your quadricep. And that was just a ton of repetition for me, where I built that strength in my quad. And then I was also building the awareness in my shoulder girdle as to where I needed to go, because I couldn't lean in and get my butt up there and be like, okay, now I'm there, let's do the rest. There's momentum involved. And so I wouldn't say my way was harder, because I think it's very hard to lean in and then lift up with the strength of the abdomen, whether you have long hamstrings or short. They're just different. So a lot of people will say my hamstrings aren't long enough to do a handstand, and they aren't long enough to do a handstand like you might see people on Instagram doing them. Because most of the people on Instagram who are taking the pretty pictures are there with the long hamstrings, and they're the dancers and they're the gymnasts who are able to do that, and it looks really pretty in a picture. My handstand, it's like bent legs, getting up there. Now, once I'm up in the air, it can look really nice, but I just don't have that hamstring length. So, and patience. Amen, sister, that you said that, because I'm talking every single day for years is what you need to put into this. And by all means, have fun.
Yes. Have fun with the whole process, even if you never get all the way vertical.
It is not the goal, it's the journey, because it is fun. There's a high when you go upside down, all that blood rushes to your head. You fall, you gotta laugh. The second you make it into a task, you're gonna lose the joy. So I started because I went through that phase where I was beating myself up, and it wasn't anybody else's issue but mine. I was the one saying, well, why can't I do this? Well, and I forget it. I had to let it go. I started doing handstands out in the grass. I started doing handstands with my kids. I started doing handstands with my track team, and I made it a joyous occasion, but I was doing it every single day. And then your body starts to learn, because we aren't walking on our hands. We aren't standing on our hands as bipeds. This is a brand new skill, especially if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s trying to learn it. Be patient.
Yeah, be patient. And I think it's so important. Have fun. We have seen, teaching so many thousands of people, the ones that are just at it and just having fun with that little bit of hop and holding consistency, and then holding consistency in their practice, really develop more of the joy than the people, like you were saying, where it's a task. I'm going to get up. When people write me and they say, okay, I want to learn how to handstand in 2 months, I just kind of want to chuckle, but also give them a hug, because I want to say, ease off. It's a foreign movement. We haven't been on our hand, most of us, in a long, long time. And there's a lot of shifts. And so let me just go on a little pedestal too here and say, not pedestal, but preacher's box. Please, to Kristen's point, stop trying to override your body and kick yourself up there, because that's a false sense of getting up. You're going to get up, but really it's not a great way to get up. And so I really wish people would stop teaching people to kick up. They're like, well, then you can at least experience it, but you need to experience all those little dots along the way. You can't see me maybe if you're not watching YouTube, but little points. Don't skip from 2 to 7 because that makes you feel better, or that makes you feel like you can check off a box or whatever. You really want to feel the process of shifting, leaning, getting up, pushing off, adding the hop, add a bigger hop, to Kristen's point, push down into the ground. This is Newton's law, equal and opposite force. You push harder down, you're going to get your pelvis up. You're not going to get it up well by kicking your top leg, which is not really having much control. I've seen some people do it and then they kind of get their control, but you're losing your core. You're skipping the steps. So that's all I want to say is please be patient, have fun, and know that it can take a while. And in the process, you're going to be balancing out your body more and more. So there are fewer restrictions, speed bumps that I like to say that get in the way. All right. Andre Ka. Causes and treatment of sacroiliitis. Anytime you hear itis, that's ouchie. You want to take that on?
Yes. Itis is synonymous with inflammation, and it is an overused term, an overused suffix, I guess we'll call it, because a lot of times, for something to be a true itis, it's an acute inflammation, and most people people do have acute sacroiliitis that then goes away. Most people are dealing with more of a chronic issue. And so sacral ilitis is usually right where the sacrum, which is the flat part of the spine, right between the tailbone and the lumbar spine, where it meets the ilium, which is like the two wing bones, the Mickey Mouse ears of your pelvis. And so we've got very, very thick, strong ligaments that hold those two bones together, or three bones, the sacrum in the middle and the two ilium, together like a tongue and groove joint. And so we were just talking about this a few weeks ago, where this is a conduit of energy, and it is a think of a tongue and groove joint in a piece of furniture. I'm looking over at one of my dressers over there. It's built that way so as not to move. It's built that way to be stable, and so is our body. And then you look at what's right next to that. You've got your hip joints, which is a ball and socket joint. So think of mechanics. If you saw something on a machine that was a tongue and groove, would you try to move that, or would you look at that ball bearing and try to move that? Well, you would go to the ball bearing. Unfortunately, what we do is we don't move the ball bearing joints, and we instead we end up defaulting to trying to move through those sacroiliac joints, and they get inflamed. Imagine how you're making a fire and you see they rub the two sticks together. Because it's motion creates inflammation. Stability does not create inflammation. Motion does. So that is what is going on. So when someone has sacroiliitis, I am usually taking my gaze away from the SI joints because I know they're not supposed to be moving. So what isn't doing its job? What is not containing in the core? Is the core not strong, so it's allowing that accessory movement? Are the hips not moving, so that has to move? Is the thoracic spine not moving well? Are we hypermobile in the lumbar spine, which again is transferring down into the SI joints? So try to look away from when you have an itis in a joint segment that shouldn't be moving. Look away to what isn't moving and should be. What do you say about that, Laura?
Yeah, I would say exact same thing. And I would look at, your posture, because if you're, again, getting back to pelvic tilt, if you're tipping forward, you can even put your hand back on the sacrum, which is the flatter area there. If you tip forward, it goes with you because of its connection to the ilia. And that is, then, that there's compression there. What is ironic is if you tilt forward, you also tend to round the same way, the opposite direction. So it's like there's too much movement there. The anterior tilting, you're pushing it forward. And then because you're like tight in your back fascia and all these other things, you round. And so that's just getting tugged on. So absolutely work on hip mobility and work on your posture, because that's setting you up for how you're going to move well. And also know about the sacrum. If you ever look, you could just Google it. There's a lot of little holes in the sacrum, and those are nerves that come through those holes. So itis can be, inflammation of a lot of different things. It could be the tissue around there, but it could also be the nerves are like really pissed off and they're sending out their own signal of inflammation. So, anytime you feel pain, like Kristen said, in an area that is supposed to be stable, think about how you can better stabilize it, which is going to be finding your triple S and then mobilizing the big joints that are made to move. that will take care of so many of these issues. If you just continue to move in the same pattern, you will continue to irritate it. And that is not what you want. And practice LYT, because this is all we do is practice how you can retrain, better movement through better posture, et cetera. So we have a couple of COVID questions, and let us just full disclosure, we are not COVID experts by any means. We're a physical therapist, so we can only give you advice on kind of our, hypothesis. So Home Life 11 says, adverse reaction to the COVID vaccine, like swollen lymph nodes, is it better to rest or move? So let's just say this is anytime you have swollen lymph nodes, because you're having the swollen lymph nodes is your body's reaction, responding to, some people didn't respond to the vaccine, some people responded a lot. But let's just say anytime there is some kind of foreign body in there that your body is trying to fight, there's going to be an increase in production in the lymphatic system, all those wonderful little micro armies that are going to come in and try and do their job. And you'll feel swelling in certain lymph nodes as that swelling of the lymphatic tissue occurs. And so, but what I'm more curious about is what does your body overall feel like? If you feel fatigued, gentle, walk a little bit, but if you get out of breath or you're really sore, or it just feels like I want to lie down, really honor that. Now, day after day, if you've had it for a while, then you have to get up and move, because ironically, moving is going to help get that lymphatic system cleared out. But I would say definitely be more gentle, move a little bit, rest some, move a little bit. I wouldn't go into anything like super rigorous until you feel like you have more energy. Any comments on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely, especially if we're talking about that lymph node, inflammation. I do know whenever you get an injection, whether it's the flu vaccine or the COVID vaccine, in that arm, that muscle soreness, the best thing for that is actually
moving it. I know. Every time I got mine, I was like, move it. I got it right away.
Yeah. And so move it like crazy. But yeah, I think that you need to honor your body's defense mechanism, which is that acute short-term, maybe fatigue that you're feeling. It should resolve. But, once you get out of that, then by all means, get back into your moving. And, I definitely know I had COVID and then I got the vaccine, maybe 2 months later. And it definitely, I didn't really have any major symptoms of COVID when I had it. I lost my taste and smell. And it was then, and I was a little bit out of breath. But I was still teaching 5 yoga classes a day, and I didn't even realize running. And then when I realized I had it, I ramped all that down, just knowing what I knew about COVID and possible side effects. And I will admit that when I got the vaccine, it was started that back up again a little bit, whew, there's that tightness of, breath. So I did slow things down, and I just, more out of precaution. I monitored my pulse ox, my oxygen levels in my blood. I monitored my heart rate just as a way to stay active. I was still active, but I went down to a run walk and walked more than I ran, just to be intelligent and preventative about it. And when I was tired, that first 24 hours, 36 hours, I didn't do jack diddly.
I know. Yeah.
My body heal. And then I got back. So yeah.
Yeah. Listen to your body and move to the amount that feels right, but don't feel like you have to hurry back to, your regular routine or anything. But it is good to move to some degree.
Absolutely.
And, piggybacking off of that, Sabrina Cunit asked, my mom has long-term COVID and senses fatigue very quickly. What part of a LYT class would you recommend her? She can only move 10 minutes at a time and then needs a 10-minute break. So first of all, I'm sorry about that. I know long-term COVID is really so challenging, and there's so much we don't even know about it. But I would say, kind of break up, Sabrina, if you're familiar with LYT, break it up into segments. If she can do the reset for 10 minutes and then need a break, and then maybe come back when she feels like, and do Sun Cell 1, and then take a break, and then maybe do one sequence, and that could be it, for a day. And maybe she doesn't do all 3 of those segments in one day, but just follows her own internal guideline, like to Kristen's point, watching about her pulse. Now she's long-term COVID, so probably the issue with the oxygen saturation being lower might not be there. I haven't heard of that as a long-term issue, but the fatigue is definitely something I have heard of. So I think it's just that balancing of like doing a little bit, and then she can go on to the next segment when she feels like it. Do you have any other suggestions there?
I do have one. I remember when we were talking with one of our students when we were doing one of our level 2 cohort groups. She had long-term COVID, and she really talked about how much a lot of the side, getting into the fascia of her thoracic spine and her ribs. So you might, Sabrina, look into some of our thoracic stuff. Thoracic mobility. She talked about how much that helped her catch her breath. Because I do think when we have a COVID or any type of a flu, type of a response, this is an inflammatory response. And sometimes it affects our soft tissues where they might get a little overactive and things start to tighten down. And what she found helped her the most was like, a side-lying thoracolumbar rotation. Warrior 2 side bending, breathing exercises, trying to open up in the ribs, and the thoracic spine helped her dramatically. So that would be my one other recommendation is maybe it's not a LYT class, maybe it's a LYT mobility class that we are putting more and more of those on there where they're shorter, they're 15, they're 20 minutes of just mobility exercises. Might be great for your mom to help open up her lung capacity just by way of mechanical availability of expansion.
I love that. I think that's so important because we don't realize how much that the musculoskeletal does affect the breathing mechanics. Like just if you sit in a rounded position, you realize, oh, wait, this contracted position is limiting the excursion of my breath and the capability of my diaphragm to move and the ribs to expand. And so that all the extra practices, exercises to enhance your breathing, full excursion would be super helpful. I love that you mentioned that. All right. Well, as always, this was such a joy. Loved your questions. Hope we answered them sufficiently. And please send us your questions. We love anything. No, nothing's off the table.
COVID too.
COVID, whatever. Ask the questions. Animals, humans, movement. We're here. They are our opinions, so take them or leave them. We're just trying to do our best and hope that we impact you in a positive way in any way we can. So you can write us at laura.hyman at Instagram, and KB is
KB Williams 99. And you can also write us at support@lytyoga.com. Those get to us as well. And, like you said, we do have a lot of experience between the two of us, whether it comes between physical therapy, yoga, motherhood, just being a female, marriage, children, you name it. We kind of open the door to, we'll give you our best answer. So
yes, we're doing our best and we'll happily share.
Thank you, guys.
I love you.
I love you too. As always.
We're pulling,
for you.
Yay, high five.